there's Brian. Okay, for those of you just joining, we got like a minute to go, and then we'll get going here. This is just getting out here on Facebook right now. So,
all right, feel free to unmute your mic.
Okay, we got just about a minute to go, guys. We'll get going with the March meeting here, and we're all just kind of getting ready and wherever we're at in various places. Brian looks like he's just relaxing.
I just finished up the 6 o'clock newscast from home here, so I'm sitting in my den.
Right on. Go Cougs.
Go Cougs. Oh, very nice.
Yeah. Got some swag sitting around here.
Mine.
Yes, Butch.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Go Cougs.
Well, it's 7 o'clock, so I say if we are up and going on Facebook Live. I don't know if Tyree had a chance to check to see, but it appears as though we're going.
We're good.
Well, let's just get going with this then. Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Steve Pierce. I'm the Oregon chapter president, the Oregon chapter of the American Meteorological Society. March 18th, Thursday. This is our annual winter weather recap meeting. We have Bobby Corser here on Zoom call right now. Welcome to everybody out there on Facebook watching our live stream. You can play this stream back later after the fact as well. Bobby is our chapter vice president. We have our guest speaker tonight, Mark Nelson from KPTV, Fox 12, chief meteorologist. It's big time, like he was saying. Let's see, Phil Welke, our treasurer. He's up there. Good evening to Phil. And Phil's got his cat, so his cat might make a cameo in here occasionally. Tyree Wild, my cat's in there too over there. By the way, Bobby's at my house tonight. We're doing this from about 6 feet apart from each other. And McMillan, counselor, meteorologist at KPTV. So good evening. And I think we got Tyree Wild in there as well. Retired and living the life, right?
He looks so relaxed.
That's right.
He's muted. But we know what he said. He said pretty much. And then we have special guest, Pete Parsons, joining us tonight. He will not be presenting, but we got him on there because he doesn't do Facebook. So, yeah, that's okay. That's all right, Pete. We still love Pete.
Smart man.
Yeah. Okay. Any business you want to take care of? Well, maybe we'll go to Phil first. Phil, any financial business, any chapter finances that we need to talk about? Everything good on your end?
Mute. 153 paid members at the moment. Oh, cool.
Nice. Anybody out there want to become a member or pay your dues for this calendar year? They're only good through June. So we're going to have another dues cycle coming up starting in September. So if you want to pay your dues, you can just Google Oregon AMS and go to our Facebook page. I'm sorry, our website, and under the membership page, that's where you can pay your dues and sign up to be a new member as well. $10 a year, easy to do. All right, so we're here to talk about the big winter of 2020, 2021, which I have a feeling Mark's going to say was a big snooze fest until the big storm hit in February, but maybe not, we'll see. Mark, I didn't even ask Mark for a bio. Most of you folks know Mark. He's been around the Pacific Northwest pretty much his entire life, and he's been in TV now. Mark, if I'm doing the math right, it should be about your 28th, 29th year?
Yeah, 27, 28, coming up on 28.
Long time.
I was just a kid back then.
And he's been the chief over at KPTV since 2000, correct?
About, yes.
Right around there. And he's got about 1 hour tonight for his presentation because he's got to get back on and do the 9 o'clock show at KPTV. So without further ado, Bobby, do we have anything from our vice president, anything you want to discuss?
Just a reminder, next meeting will be our nomination meeting for our yearly elections.
Yep.
So have an eye out toward email on that. We'll get all that stuff out. And if you guys are interested in running, feel free to get those nominations ready. If you have any questions about open positions, which all of ours are every year, feel free to reach out to any of us. So yeah, that's what we got on this end.
And I'll send an email out about that. The executive council, we still need to talk about the election process, but we'll get an email update out to you about election nominations. We're also putting together an April meeting, which will be a recap specifically different from Mark's presentation. We're going to go into detail with the National Weather Service and a meteorologist from Portland General or from PGE. And we're going to discuss in detail the big snow and ice freezing rainstorm back there in February over the holiday weekend there on President's Day and Valentine's Day. So we don't have the exact date set up yet, but we'll get all the information out there once it's ready to go. It'll be 7 o'clock, either Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday evening in April. So still putting it together. One final thing for those of you who are paid Oregon AMS members, be on the lookout for an email update on the summer barbecue. And we've got the date scratched in for that. Does anybody on the EC remember exactly the date? I think we were shooting for August
14th. I think it's a Saturday.
Yeah, Saturday. Did you say the 14th or 15th?
14th.
14th. Yeah, Saturday, August 14th. So you'll get more detailed information on that coming up. Okay, so I guess without further ado, Mark, have at it and enjoy Mark's presentation.
Okay, well, thanks, Steve. Yeah, this winter was interesting. So it's a little bit different. This is the first time. Yeah, this is the first time that we are doing this all on Zoom, because those of you from last year will remember we met, I think it was on March 10th last year, right over not far. I'm in the station right now. And we just met right over at the Golden Valley Brewery, and it was March 10th, and the world was just beginning to kind of shut down. And I remember we, at that time, made some jokes about like, hey, should we be so close? But I mean, we weren't doing masks, social distancing hadn't really happened yet. So yeah, that was weird because that brackets this whole year, the last winter recap and this year's winter recap. Well, I've got more action in this winter's recap. We all know that, don't we? So let me share screen, see if I get it right here. And you folks on the Zoom call will let me know if something's not working correctly. First, I need to get you all out of the way here. Okay. Okay, hopefully we can all see that. I'm guessing we can. So winter 2021, big story was, remember, this was a La Nina winter, and we'll probably have some discussion about that at the end. It was a La Nina winter, which is a cooling of the tropical Pacific. And in these winters, typically, but not always, we have cooler than normal conditions in the Pacific Northwest, and typically, but not always, we have wetter than normal conditions in the Pacific Northwest. So how did it turn out? Well, it was a very mild La Nina winter. In fact, it was the warmest La Nina winter in Western Oregon. This is in the Western climate zone, the valleys, in 70 years. That said, it was close to 1 or 2 years. I think it was back to it was our warmest La Nina winter since 1951. But what do we all remember about this winter? Remember the big snow and ice storm. So perception is reality. That's the case in TV. And that's, I think, what most people will remember about this winter. Let me hit the button down here again. There we go. Come on. We're back. All right. So November through March, it was a mild winter. I would argue it was saved by 5 wintry days in the lowlands of Northwest Oregon and Southwest Washington. 4 of those were in February. 1 was at the end of January. You can probably guess what I'm talking about when I say a wintry day. We'll get to all of this in much more detail here in these next 40 minutes or so. Low Cascade snowpack. That was something, sometimes that happens in La Nina years. Something to discuss later. Low Cascade snowpack until mid-February. Then we had 2 glorious weeks, actually about 2.5 glorious weeks of big snowstorms. La Nina redeemed itself in the Cascades, that's for sure. That was not a problem in the end. We're still waiting for a regional Arctic blast. We've gone 7 consecutive winters without a widespread Arctic outbreak, and I'll explain what I mean by that coming up. December 2013 was the last regional Arctic outbreak. All right, big picture. December through February. These are just the temperatures, December through February across the country. And if we take that whole winter, we consider meteorologically winter is December, January, and February. In general, much of the country was warmer than average or average. And notice where it was cool, Texas, Oklahoma, that was all about February. Let's just take it month by month then. Whoops. Oh, we'll do that in a second. Official snow total, and I love this picture from, I don't know if OC's watching, but OC Hoflein and his family up there in Battleground. What a great, it was a Chevy, I think, or is it a Ford from back in the 1950s? But there you go. 10.1 inches of snow. That was the official total at the Portland Weather Service forecast office. That's where the official Portland measurements are taken, but they are also taken downtown Portland at KGW. So let me turn off my phone. 7.6 inches down there. So those are the official totals. We had 1 measurable snow and ice event. Now we can argue about was the one storm one event or 4. I don't think it was 4, but we'll get into this in more detail. But those are the actual daily values, midnight to midnight, for each of those days. We did not have measurable snow at the end of January, but many places did. More on that coming up. And then freezing rain, wow, 3/4 of an inch of freezing rain between February 12th, 13th, and 14th. As I recall, I think most of that was on the 13th and 14th. So there's at 10.1 inches in Portland. Okay, big picture in November, wow, blowtorch across most of the country. We were average here in November, and we might have been slightly above average. I don't remember, but yeah, it was a warm month. December, warmer than average across much of the country. Parts of the Pacific Northwest, much above average. So a warm start to the winter. And we've talked about this in the past, that in La Nina winters, sometimes it is just mild to start. This is probably what many of us did not expect. We get into January and still the same thing. So our third month, November, December, January, still very mild. No sign of cold air at all in the month of January. But oh, there you go. February delivered. And you can see the cold weather, the extreme cold across the Midwest. And then we were kind of on the edge of that. March so far, I would not have expected this in March so far. We were at this goes halfway through the month. And you can see most of the country well above average for the month of March. But that could change here in the next week and a half. It does look kind of coolish. If you look at the precipitation anomaly, the cool colors are, as you see the legend down below, wetter than normal. The warm colors are drier than normal. Look at that on the West Coast. Washington, wetter than normal. Oregon, about average, except for the southern part. And then California, very dry. That is a classic La Nina signature with the wetter up north, drier to the south. All right, Western Valley's winter temperatures. So this, now we get into some hardcore charts here. So this is from NCEI, the National Center for Environmental Information. Western Valley's winter temperature the past 100 years. It is random. I like to just go 100 years back. This was another mild winter. The last real cold winter was in 2016 and 17. Let me get my pointer out here. And there we are right there. So that was this past winter, kind of similar actually to the previous winter temperature wise, just slightly cooler. Yeah, this was that really cold one. I remember when we had all the snow and ice, 2016, 17. And then before that, the last real cold winter was 92, 93. And you do see that in the past, there were more spikes downwards. So if Grandpa says, yeah, winters used to be colder, that actually is true. We tended to have more cold air outbreaks in the past, at least colder winters, I should say. That's in the Western, that is the Western Valleys of Oregon and Washington. If you take all of the state of Oregon, you can see we're right here, which is a bit above average. This is the average line for the, yeah, that's the average. And then you can see we were a little bit above average. Slow warming trend continues. Again, even for Oregon, the last real cold winter was 2016, 17. All right, so let's get into the months. What happened? The first few months are really easy. November, nothing interesting happened. Typical mild and wet weather, no storms. I'll show these graphs here, which is Portland temperatures. This is at the airport for November. This is the average high. This is the average low. The green area is within about average. And of course, weather is almost never average. It's always slightly above or slightly below. But you can see warm at first and then kind of cool into early mid-November and then ups and downs, but nothing unusual here. We had no significant storms in November, but I bet nobody remembers this. Only way I remember this one is that I save the files as we go through the winter when something interesting happens. And I remember this day, November 2nd, over in Redmond, 22 in the morning, 80 in the afternoon. That is refreshing, huh? But to 80 degrees on the 2nd of November. I thought that was interesting. One nice thing that got us maybe excited about La Nina, we had good snow suddenly arrive in mid-November up in the Cascades. 43 inches on the ground at Timberline, 44 inches at Meadows. This is on November 15th. It was kind of a warmish storm, as they sometimes are in November, but notice not nearly as much at Government Camp. And that was actually an issue all the way until mid-January up in the Cascades. We did have one bit of excitement, I suppose, in the Western Valleys. We had a really weak tornado, another EF0, St. Helens. It was on Tuesday the 10th. Short path, not much damage, some large limbs. It was our third tornado in 2020. I forget what the other two were. Maybe, yeah, I forget. But anyway, there you go. I don't know if this will play, depending on my internet speed. Let's see. Is it going to play? It is not going to play, but we had one of our best videos that I've seen for a tornado. And you could actually see circulation up here. Yeah, it doesn't want to play. Oh, there it is. I don't know if it'll play online though.
Is Grandma's house okay? Should we call Grandma?
Were you able to hear that or see that? Anybody? Steve, Bobby? No? Okay.
We
So-
were able to hear it, Mark.
So, okay, so they did call Grandma. Grandma was fine, in case anybody needed to know. Grandma was just fine, but that was exciting. Nice video. You could clearly see the circulation. Sometimes we get still pics when we have a possible tornado or a funnel cloud, and the newsroom will send us the image or the video, and we'll be like,
Yes, we got it, Mark.
Okay. We'll say, yeah, we can't tell, but that was the one video I remember. I think it was Brian. Brian, you and I looked at that, or maybe it was Ann too, and just said, oh yeah, that was a tornado. Okay, December, nothing to see here. This is the only month I have where there was nothing interesting, that I had nothing in my files for this month. It was just mild and wet. There was a weak atmospheric river right in here around the 20th and 21st. Looks like we tied a record high. That was it. So because of the either warm storms or just not a whole lot happening storm-wise, by January 1st, snowpack was below average, a little bit below average. We started slipping. It was above average in early to mid-December. Then it started slipping as we went into January. And January in general was a very mild month and a wet month. Look at these, look how much of the time the high temperatures were way above average, well above or at average. In fact, I don't think there was a cool day in January until the 24th. Is that right? 23rd or 24th. This was the only winter since I built my chicken coop that I just have an exposed outside line. So I need to more or less turn it off if it's going to get below like 27, 26. I didn't have to turn it off until mid-February till the freeze. That was first time in 11 years I didn't have to do that, which tells you how mild the winter was. Just really mild stuff. Look at this around the 11th and the 12th and 13th lows. Atmospheric river right there. All right, so we made it all the way to mid-January. A lot of us were thinking, oh man, just nothing is happening with this La Nina winter. Most boring winter I've seen so far. And then finally, we had an atmospheric river, rain and windstorm. Lots of river flood warnings. That was the most I'd seen in a while. Now, most of those warnings were minor. I don't think there were hardly any with moderate flooding, but mostly minor flooding. Storm total rainfall 11th through the 13th of January, 2 to 3 inches. So that was a nice soaker. And in fact, in the Cascades, look at these numbers. How many days was that? 11, 12, 13. So 3 days there. And 8 to 10 inches up in the Cascades. That was like the old days. That was a wet system as it came through. Pretty warm stuff. Caused a house to come off its foundation in Astoria and another slide at Dodson. And those of you that were around in 1996 will remember the White House. I think Royce was the last name of the folks that lived there. And their house was pushed off its foundation by a big slide that came right through this area last time. And so it was 25 years ago. And that house then, was covered up by the alder trees in the following 20 years. Then that house burned and those alder trees burned during the 97 Eagle Creek fire in the gorge. And then that same property, look at that, the mudslide came down right behind and just to the west of that. And unfortunately, one person did die. They were coming home and I think the mudslide enveloped the car and they found her under the mud. So that was a really sad story there. So that was a Dodson slide in mid-January. We did have an interesting event with the end of this atmospheric river. As the final cold front pushed through, we had a rare surge of westerly wind across the Northern Valley. The peak gust at the Glen Jackson Bridge was 54. I think that might have been a westerly. Now, you see the PDX gust right there, southwest. Is right around midnight the night the cold front came through. But just after that, there was a westerly gust, I think, to 48. And I think that's what did most of the damage. I just remember there were a lot of PGE outages, considering the speed of the winds was not that great here. It's generally on the east side. But that was a little event there that came through. We don't get many westerly wind surges like that. And down in the valley around Brooks and Mount Angel, Monitor area, there were some spots that had a lot of damage. I had 3 different people reach out to me and say, did a tornado go through this area? It seemed to be narrow. So maybe there was some straight line winds with that cold front, but that was a busy night at midnight. I remember the wind hitting my house suddenly. Okay, so you know what that did? That atmospheric river melted more of the Cascade snowpack. So here we get to mid-January. We're down to 68% in the Mount Hood basin here. The snow-tell sites were running well below average. It's like, oh, this is not good for La Nina. Eastern Oregon was mostly hanging on. They were doing okay, but that didn't help things out. So if you look back, December 1st through January 19th. So we get just past the halfway point. Number of 50-degree days, Portland had its most on record. Salem had the most 50-degree days up to that point in the winter in 100 years. Astoria had the most 50-degree days or 50 degrees or warmer by mid-January as well. So it was a really warm start to winter, that first half. Then we finally had some excitement. It snowed. First snow of the season for some of us in the lowlands, not everybody, but that was on January 26th. And this was interesting because this was the WRF GFS model, and it clearly showed, and models kind of were hinting at this, that the west side of the valley would have the better chance. I think there was very light easterly flow. There wasn't too much wind coming out of the gorge. It wasn't that cold, as I recall, but it was just barely cold enough that model said, okay, we're going to get some sort of snow sticking mainly west of I-5, and the blue areas here would be 2 inches more. This model did really well the WRF, which actually handled the February event well as too. So here are the snow totals. I know there was great debate among 2 or 3 people about Clark County. I had somebody say, no, Clark County had a ½ inch or so. But Steve Pierce, you said you drove all around Salmon Creek and it was just a dusting on the grass for you, right?
That is correct. I'm sorry. Which event was this again?
Oh, the only other one,
Danny.
that close
Yeah.
call one. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was pretty weak.
It was the same thing here that we're at the TV station. KPTV is over on the west side about here. And I think it was just barely on the grass. Snowed heavily. Everybody got really excited. It was good stuff. Officially, KGW map measured 0.1 inch. And that's why I say this wasn't an official snowfall. It was only a trace at the office. So basically, all these areas that are not in white in general didn't have measurable snow in general. But look at that Forest Grove effect. Banks, Forest Grove, Gaston, Chehalem Mountain did really well. I think I have one more here. Yeah, and then down into the west side of the valley, Eola Hills, 6 inches, 4 inches, Sheridan. And South Hills of Salem, boy, I really messed up that forecast. I should have paid attention to that WRF because if you look closely, it did have stuff in the Salem and South Salem Hills. But they're a ½ inch in North Salem to 3 inches in South Salem as the elevation goes up. A little bit in Silverton, a little bit in Molalla. So almost everybody got to see snow in the air that day, but only some of us actually had sticking snow. And that was January 26th. All right, so I'm thinking after that happened, I'm thinking, is that going to be it? February starts, and I'm like, if something's going to happen, it's going to happen in the next 3 weeks here. So February, if you look at the month as a whole, pretty average temps, right? Pretty normal, except, right in the red box, what was going on here? We all know what happened here. But those were 4 cold and memorable days, starting on Thursday the 11th, Friday the 12th, Saturday the 13th, 14th, and then Sunday the 14th. And then President's Day, we're out of it. We're up around 50 degrees again. Look at those 3 highs, 30, 30, and 32. And I don't have, out of all these numbers I don't have the actual stats, but I think somebody said, or I saw it somewhere, that those 3 days were the latest to have 3 consecutive days at or below freezing that we've seen in Portland, where you have 3 consecutive days. That's pretty unusual once you get to mid-February. Wouldn't be as unusual here, but here and beyond, wow. All right, so we're going to talk about those 4 days quite a bit. So what happened is we had a historic Arctic air mass that surged into the middle of the USA. We all know about the extreme cold back in the middle of the country, and that came straight south. So this was Sunday the 7th. This is what we call a 500 millibar chart. This was soon after the initialization time of this model, the WRF GFS. And I know it's not the prettiest, but it makes the point that we had this cold northern stream here. This is the upper levels. We had a little bit of an undercutting southerly stream kind of at this point. And the core of the cold air is here and here. So forecast, this was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So 4 days later, wow, this gets edges a little bit closer. And then we've got this cold northerly flow. I mean, we are right on the edge of this historic cold air mass. When I say historic, it just means, when we look back in the history books, it's like, wow, this was a really cold one. So we're going to be right on the edge. As always, the big question, clearly, most of the time, as you'll see, most models were not showing a big blast of air coming straight south. It wasn't going to be going like this, and it's all coming down like that. But we were going to get nicked by this thing. But how much of the cold air makes it in? And what kind of undercutting moisture do we get coming from the west to interact with the cold air? So the cold air did flow over the Cascades and through the gorge on Thursday, February 11th. As always, models struggled with the details, but in general, they all said something was coming. All right. So we know this did not happen. I'm not picking on the GEM model, but it was exceptionally cold early on. This is the Canadian model. It showed actually, let me go back, this big, basically a little chunk of the polar vortex. It showed it maybe rotating in directly over the Pacific Northwest. And this would have been just amazing. Something I think we've probably never seen in mid-February. Those of you that are weather geeks, at one point it was forecasting -21 or -22 over Portland, which would just about tie the coldest on record any time of the year over Northwest Oregon. I think the all-time record at Salem on the sounding is -22. So anyway, it became obvious this was let's see when it was initialized. Yeah, this was on Sunday morning before the event. So I think this was the last time it showed that. So from that point forward, it became more clear, okay, we're not going to get like a big Arctic blast and have a high temperature of 18 in Portland. But how much snow? Oh, always a pain to forecast. All over the place. As until we got within about 3 days, 3 to 4 days, the models didn't really come together too much. But I think I learned this time, as we kind of knew from last time, don't forecast specific snow totals until 2 to 3 days ahead of the event, or most likely you're going to get burned. Model ensembles, which is many different runs of the same model, were really helpful with this event, as you'll see in a minute. For example, here is a GFS operational model, the one, the main model. This was Sunday evening's forecast the night before. The Sunday, the 7th, and you can see it's just painting huge amounts of snow all up and down the valleys from Olympia, all the way down to like Roseburg. Huge snowstorm. And then it kind of backed up. By the time we get to 3 days later, this is, and these are the only 2 GFS maps I have. Brian McMillan is saying, oh no, here's Mark's Euro bias. I only had these 2. I asked people if they had the intervening days. I was curious to see what they showed, but nobody could seem to find them. But this is from Wednesday. Remember, the event began on Thursday, Friday, right in there. It was still going for huge snow totals up here. Okay, that was just 2 of the operational models. All right, so this is the Euro model. This was on Sunday morning, and is Salem not going to get snow, and they're just going to get it mainly up in Puget Sound, and we're right on the edge in Portland. What was interesting as we went through that week, then this is the Monday forecast, so the next day, ooh, bigger snow in Portland. Salem, probably not going to happen, or this model doesn't think so. They kept showing this line as we went through the whole week. This is then on Tuesday. Still big snow, north half of Portland up into Southwest Washington, Salem. I think at this point it was becoming obvious of Salem, you're not going to get any sort of significant snow. Same thing, this was by Wednesday. So this is Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. This is the 4th day of these maps I'm showing you. Same thing, lines somewhere over the metro area of big snow to the north, little or no snow to the south. And then the final forecast Thursday, maybe about a foot of snow from here north, nothing at Salem. So at least models kind of converge. And as I recall, the GFS was starting to do that as well, showing, okay, Salem's probably not going to get much. It became obvious this was going to be more of an event, not where, we get a huge blast of Arctic air all through the Western Oregon, but it's only going to come out, just to the North Coast and maybe down to Salem or so, and that's it. So here's a great example. Okay, you ready for lots of numbers, folks? This is from Sunday evening the 7th. This is a good example of why we should be using ensembles, even though it's more fun to look at the operational runs. So this is Sunday evening the 7th, thanks to Chris Calais. If you look at just a GFS forecast, all we really care about is this area. So Thursday, high of 36 off the GFS, 24 Friday, 25 Saturday, 34 Sunday. Look at this. The Euro says, nah, it's only going to be 42 Thursday, 48 Friday, and 43 Saturday, and 45 Sunday. So Euro says, Portland, nothing's going to happen. That was on its operational model. It was only one run that did this. But look, if you would have used the ensembles, the Euro then was 37, 31, 33, much closer to reality. And notice the GFS ensemble is very similar. So when we're farther out in time, when we're not within a day or 2, I really am convinced now. It's like a combo of models is going to help you best. Yes, I love my Euro, but yeah, a combo of the models is going to lead you into a better forecast than depending on just one and sticking with it. And this was a Canadian, actually on that day, Canadian did best here at Portland, 30, 31, 35. So interesting stuff. All right, so what happened that week? So we had the cold air come down from the north. Notice the time here, I'm gonna go through a few maps. This was a forecast for 7 a.m. Friday. This was, I think all these maps are based on Thursday morning. because basically not much changed after that time. By Wednesday morning, things were kind of set. Minor changes, but nothing big. So we had several lows come up against the coastline. Here comes one Thursday night and Friday morning. That was the initial push of precipitation. Then the big surge came in. This is Friday at 10 p.m. Look at that thing coming in. There was a lot of moisture with this one that was well advertised. We had tons of precip to work with that second wave. And as you'll see, that's what caused the icing issues. Well, major ice storm in the valley. So this is 10 p.m. Friday. Second wave is coming through, kind of knocks down the high a little bit. And then by Saturday, oh, let me back up. Everybody sees the low there, right? So by Saturday, then, this is just classic. If you want a big snow or ice storm, the low comes up towards us. If it would have continued going like that, we're out of it. We're in south wind. It's warming up. But instead, the low, as kind of expected, falls apart, curls down to about the mouth of the Columbia River, keeping the cold air going in the North Valley and tons of moisture overhead. So this is 10 a.m. Saturday. So this kind of reminds me of 2008 when we had a couple lows kind of spin in like this, or come in from the northwest like that. If you don't have lows going by to the north, you're not going to get rid of the cold air. So by Sunday morning, then here comes a final. Nothing was going on. Not much was going on Saturday through Sunday morning. Cold air still in place, and here comes an approaching low. But this last one, Sunday night, it goes by to the low goes by to the north. Strong south wind by Monday morning. That's why we jumped up to 50 Monday afternoon. Okay, so models had forecast 3 waves of precipitation. It really ended up, and I'm sure the forecasters from the National Weather Service, when they give their presentation next month, they'll have more details on this. But I remember just saying, hey, it looks like 3 waves of precip coming in: Thursday night, Friday night, and then Sunday night. Ended up more as 2 main surges. And remember, we were pretty nervous as forecasters that first evening. It was really light snow, and I'm thinking, oh gosh, where's all the precip? But we did okay in the end with that one. And then there was a lot of freezing drizzle in between. And I remember from previous ice storm, the freezing drizzle can add up to quite a bit. So final snow totals, what did we have? 7.5 out of that event downtown, 10.1 at the Weather Service forecast office. The white here, I've just said, okay, that's about the 1-inch line. That said, somebody told me they got 2.5 inches in Newburgh. So maybe I'm wrong on that one. Maybe it curled around more like this. And then lots of heavy snow to the north. So in general, models saying snow to the north half of the metro, mainly freezing rain or mainly ice pellets or mixed to the south. They were right. Just look at the precip numbers. Thursday night through Friday sunrise. This is at Portland Airport, 0.04. 0.97 from Friday morning to Saturday morning. That's why we had a huge ice storm in the valley. That's a lot of precip for one of our snow events. Then the next, what do we have, 28 hours, is that right? Next 28 hours, we only had 0.09 of an inch. So pretty quiet Saturday morning through midday Sunday. And then that last wave came through about 0.5 inch of precipitation, which was all freezing rain. At that point, it had warmed up too much overhead. Okay, that ice storm, South Metro and into the valley. Models did a relatively good job of showing the thick icing down there in the south and the west edge of the cold air mass. This is from Wednesday. I think by Wednesday, it was becoming obvious, once we kind of settled into what was generally going to happen. Here's an ice accumulation forecast. And I've noticed in the past in the gorge, they tend to forecast too much ice. So I remember, I wouldn't say I poo-pooed this, but on the air and in my blog, I think I said, okay, it probably won't be this heavy, but it looks like a significant ice event coming up here in the valley. In this case, there was more icing over here than it shows. That was the Euro. Here is the GFS. It was producing far too much in the on the coast. I think it was just colder in general, I guess. Yeah, because they both had about the same amount of precip, I think. Okay, so they had the general idea right. That was absolutely amazing to see this much ice, what you typically see in like Cascade Locks during a bad winter, to see that in the Portland metro area and down to Salem and Silverton. And I'd never seen anything like it. I saw a reference to this may have been the worst ice storm we've seen in the valley since the early 1940s. I'd love to know if somebody knows that for sure. Or, feel free to type in comments on Facebook. And any of you that are on the Zoom call, of course, you can jump in at any time if you got thoughts to add there. Weather Service did a great little map here showing where the heaviest icing was, right across here. And then this is the prettier TV version. Just amazing, by the way, to see 1 3/4 to 2 inch totals in a place that normally gets little or no freezing rain. If you had these totals out in the gorge, yeah, there'd be damage, but it happens probably every 5 years, that thickness. But to have that out here was just amazing. Also notice west side, very little freezing rain. Although actually the Weather Service shows an inch. I don't think there was actually an inch out there at Forest Grove and Hillsborough. I know at the station we had maybe a quarter inch. So if anybody has thoughts on that, Forest Grove and Hillsborough, you didn't have an inch of ice, right? I don't think so.
And Mark, we had about half an inch
So you did
on
at Hillsborough?
flat surfaces. Some of that was probably melted sleet, but there was a solid period where we had about 3/8 of an inch ice.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. So what was my point here? Oh, there we go. I won't dwell on this. These are just some numbers, and I might be wrong on one. I'm not sure if the 350 is right. Brian, if you're still on, was that the final number, or was it 280? Anyway, a lot of people were out, and Charlie is going to tell us all about this next month when he works for PGE, and he can tell us all about the PGE stuff. But just what an amazing and historic storm there. Okay, I felt, my opinion, and we can discuss this. I thought this. Let me keep hitting the buttons. So let me back up. It was nice this time as opposed to other times. I didn't see, unless maybe some of you saw this, I did not see any, considering we had models that at times were showing 20 or 30 inches of snow over the metro area. I didn't see any of that on social media now. I was very busy. But in other parts of the country, that's been a huge issue leading up to these events where, people say, oh my gosh, and they spread it to their friends. And can you believe we've got 32 inches of snow coming? I didn't see any of that. Yeah, I saw it in the weather groups, but that's what we do. But I didn't see anything unleashed on social media, which made the job easier for forecasters. In general, I felt forecasts were pretty good leading up to this event. Winter storm watches and warnings by the Weather Service were issued well ahead of the event, which was good. Remember, at first, there wasn't much, and I had some doubters that first night. People were saying, it's just like the rest, nothing's going to happen. And I'm thinking, waiting for that precip from that second wave to come through, and I'm thinking, you just wait. General idea from early on, snowy north half metro, icy south half, and of course you're going to have a mixture, in between. Worked out well. Unfortunately, since the Portland TV stations were centered in the metro area, we would have preferred that line be either north or south of us. But we had to cover that, cutting right through the bulk of our viewer area. So another thing I would have changed, and I didn't think about this till just a few days ago, through much of this event, I kept saying snowy north metro or north and east metro and icy south and west. I don't know why I wasn't just saying north half, south half. That would have made more sense. Next time, there's always next storm. And was there one more? Yeah, lots of little minefields to navigate that week. At one point, I think it was Friday evening, it looked like there was kind of a warm nose overhead and the freezing rain was pushing all the way up into the near the airport, which I didn't like that. We didn't expect it to go quite that far north. But in my opinion, and we can debate this, I think this snow and ice storm was forecast better, and I was more comfortable with it than any of the past 25 years. The last few big ones, January 2017, I mean, come on, that was the one where it snowed far more than we expected. We knew there was a snowstorm coming, but not more than 4 inches. December 2008, actually that one wasn't bad, but I think it went on longer than we expected. I think that was the issue. And I know 2004 went on much longer than expected. And 98, that one came in early, as I recall, started kind of earlier than we expected as well. But this one, we had the basic ideas right. We didn't have any fiascos on the highways. People were off the roads that first day. COVID helped, I suppose, in that case. But this is a blog post from just that Sunday evening, making it clear that, okay, something's up here. Looks like the chance of a big freeze is low. Temperatures below 20 appear likely. By Tuesday evening, this got the news director pretty excited. This could be the biggest February snowstorm of my career, 2 to 12 inches. And it made that clear that was spread out through the metro area, very light south, heavy north. And then much of the metro area is going to be frozen Thursday night to Sunday morning. It is interesting that then the next day, I think I posted a comment about, I think I said something like, hey folks, people are clearing out the stores. And I said, hey, this isn't going to go on. This is February. It's not going to go on. You're not stuck in your homes for a week. And people, probably for good reason, interpreted that comment as like, oh, Mark's backing off. No, I just shouldn't have put that in there because I can see how that could lead to people thinking I changed our forecast, but we didn't. Okay, so 2 big weeks of Cascade snowfall followed. Look at that snowpack, February 27th, 125% of average on Mount Hood. Most of the state at that point was looking pretty good, except Southern Oregon was still lagging. Excuse me. Now we're up to mid-March. That was February 27th, almost 3 weeks ago. This is yesterday. We've lost more down here. I mean, or at least we've fallen a bit below average here. Still doing okay up north. It looks like in general, we're in good shape. You look at just the graph for the Mount Hood test site. This is at the bottom of the Poochie lifted timberline. The NRCS folks provide this graph. This is an average year as the snowpack adds up. This is snow water equivalent, how much water's in the snowpack. About 60 inches if you melt it all down. This is average. So the year started out big, November, nice. Then kind of around average, lagging a bit, you know, mid to late January. We're kind of wondering, okay, shouldn't La Nina be delivering? And oh, it sure did. Look at that go up. But then it's leveled off again. Although I think it'll take off again this next week. We'll get some more. My guess is by April 1st, which is here, we should be up in here somewhere. So we'll probably stay above average. But I wouldn't have expected, I would not expect a warm and mild, it's not warm, a mild and dryish March to continue through the rest of the month. That would be unusual in a La Nina winter. So nice start above 4,000 feet in late November. Skiing conditions were just okay, but at least things got started until mid-February. And then of course, ski season was amazing the last 4 weeks. By the way, Mount Hood snowfall, this is the average for any year at government camp at the end of the winter. And we've achieved that already at government camp. So that's good. Mount Hood Meadows right there. So we've achieved what we wanted for a La Nina winter. I mean, if suddenly we had a drought, that would be strange, and it stopped snowing, that would be strange. But I think we're pretty confident it'll snow some more. So that's snow. Winter went easy on our gardens. Wow. Only because of that little blast of cold air coming through the gorge did PDX get down to 24. Up until that time, I think the low had been 27. Maybe a little better measure is you can see the really cold Arctic blast winters, the blues. The coldest high temperature at PDX, 30 this past year. Last year, we never had a high temperature below 40. And that's how we were up until, I think it was the same thing until we got to mid-February. Those 4 days is what made this winter. 4 days, folks, that was it. So Tanis Leach, if you watched his presentation back in October, his winter weather forecast, he came up with this, you know, kind of qualifying what's an Arctic blast or not in the Pacific, or for Portland specifically. And I'd kind of forgotten about that. And then when he mentioned it again recently, I said, hey, where did you get that criteria of a major Arctic blast or region wide is when the 850 millibar temp goes below 12 at Salem? He said, oh, I got it off your blog. And sure enough, it was on my blog from 4 years ago. I'd forgotten I had said that. But so if you categorize them that way, the green ones here, these events, significant or historic, but not a region-wide Arctic outbreak. And then the yellow ones, that's where it's deep cold air that comes in. And you see the last time that happened was December 2013. You see it in 2010, 2009, 98, the big one in December of 90. Look at all these right here in the mid to late 80s. So this one, of course, it was very shallow cold air. Minus 0.7, I mean, this is just like a 3,000 foot snow level over Salem. So, yeah, so we didn't have a big deep penetration of cold Arctic air, but it was plenty cold to do the job. And I did get this from Tanis. Up through this in here. He said, hey, here's my verification for his winter forecast. And he'd gone for, I think this is what he said in October. Then he revised it by December. So that's what these two mean. Peak gust, he likes that. He hit 50. PDX's peak gust was 50. So we didn't have any big windstorm this winter. Temperature departure, he went for near to below average. And of course that didn't happen. Lowest temp he figured to be a little colder. That didn't happen, but water year pacing for reasonable. Valley snow, feels good about that at least. And his timing, he said, indirectly mentioned sometime later in the winter. I think everybody was talking like later in the winter. So there you go. So we had 10.1 inches. Interesting that officially at PDX now we've had 6 consecutive winters with measurable snow. So are we going to have a 7th? I don't have the stats on that. Any one of you that have that chime in, but I don't know if we've had 7 or 8 ever. We will see. And this has not changed because we're now in a new decade. This refers to last decade. We used to have more snow at PDX, but it's leveled off the last 4 decades, 1980s to 2010s. Downtown Portland goes farther back in time. Always interesting to see the early 19-aughts, that it was low, little jump up, and then a gradual drop off. But again, even in downtown, it's leveled off a bit. Same thing. We didn't have any big windstorms. 25 years without a major regional storm. Last one was in 1995. Oh, there it is. East wind season wasn't bad at all. I had a neighbor that lives in the east wind out in Corbett say, it seems really, we're hardly getting any east wind. It's no big deal. And when it was kind of mild. Of course, 4 days in February were really cold, but the whole season as a whole, nothing really stuck out here. Not like these 3 winters and these 2. All right, is that it? Yeah, final thoughts here. One is, think about this, folks. That cold air was so shallow. At least, I mean, the edge of it was shallow. I mean, over us, it was, 3,000 feet thick, I suppose, over the metro area. But if that whole pattern remember the upper level flow, the cold air in the upper levels kind of rotating around. If that whole pattern would have shifted just slightly farther north, like that Euro on that one Sunday night would have verified just a little farther north, would have rained Valentine's weekend, and we'd be talking about what a boring winter it was. Isn't that amazing how we're always on kind of the edge of snow here west of the Cascades? It's always kind of an exceptional and exciting time. And everything has to be just right, and everything was just right those 4 days. The wet part of La Nina turned out correct, but definitely warmer than and you folks can correct me, but I mean warmer than forecasters expected and far less active than we might think in a La Nina. But the last La Nina was relatively quiet as well. And will we have another winter with measurable snow at PDX? We will see. Okay, question time, comment, thoughts.
All right, Mark, a lot of people are chiming in on Facebook. You asked about freezing rain on the east side or the west side of the metro.
Sure.
Most of that, and I can attest to this being in Beaverton, we never got freezing rain per se. We got a lot of sleet.
Yeah, ice pellets.
And that was what, we got. I know where I got in South Beaverton, total accumulation of about 1 inch of sleet. There was a little freezing rain here and there, but for the most part, I would say maybe from Tualatin south is really where you saw the freezing rain transition from that to snow.
I got a provocative statement for you. Let's see what people think about this. So, well, one, I've never seen an ice storm cover the entire metro area at once. That doesn't happen. Because if cold air is really deep coming out of the gorge, you're gonna have snow on the east side. And where the cold air is thinner, like we saw this time, then you're gonna have freezing rain or ice pellets and a mix in the middle. But here's something else. The west side of the metro, I don't know if I've ever seen snow deeper than a foot at Hillsborough or North Plains or Beaverton. What about in 2008? Was there more than a foot?
No, it got to like 11.5 inches.
I hope nobody's insulted by this, but I think that possibly one of the more boring parts of the metro area to live in, if you want snow or freezing rain or high winds from the east or, just real winter weather, I think the west side is the most boring. I mean, the lowest elevation is not if you live in the hills above Buxton or up at Pumpkin Ridge Golf Course. Yeah, you get snow. But we don't have extreme ice storms on the far west side, and we don't have 2-foot snowfalls over there.
Let me throw this out there.
There we go.
We're relying then on an east wind event to create snow in the metro area, say the west side, Beaverton, Hillsborough. Would the West Hills act as a barrier for that?
Yep.
And I think that might be part of it. I know when I've lived in Beaverton for the majority of my life, I've always lived in areas where I don't have the West Hill protection, and I do get an east wind, and I have seen snow events get 10, 11 inches, but you travel other parts into North Beaverton that don't have that east wind, and the snow total does go down. So maybe that's something there.
Now, Mark, if you go out to Forest Grove and you get that Forest Grove effect, that's where it can really pile up, and especially in like the coastal valleys, like Gales Creek and the hills above it. My Coast Range place had 15 inches in places, 8 or more on the ground on Monday afternoon. I mean, my truck got stuck in it for a bit.
I was thinking like right in the metro. I mean, like from North Plains to Hillsborough to Aloha, Beaverton. Like I've worked here 20 years at the station, and we've never had more than a foot of snow. And we've never had a really thick ice.
96, we had about 3/4 of an inch in Hillsborough in February.
I'm in Bethany, and I'm telling you, Bethany gets absolutely clobbered. And that's on the west. January 2017, we got 12.5 inches that night. And we get 40 to 50 mile an hour east winds when these, like this
Yeah.
last one that came through, we probably had 40 mile an hour east winds. We did not get, we got snow and sleet and some freezing rain, so it didn't add up that much this time. I think you had 4.5 inches. That was probably about right. It was like a ice sandwich.
Sure.
But that 2017 one, that was all snow, and yeah, I measured 12.5 inches out at my place.
And you are exposed. You're up there in Bethany. You get that. Anybody that's close where the wind comes over the top of the West Hills down slope. Yeah, that whole area from there down to Providence, St. Vincent. I've driven through that during those snowstorms, and man, the wind, it'll gust to 40 or so. You're right.
Yeah, it rocks. I didn't know there was a wind belt here until I lived out here, but there is.
Same with me until I worked out here.
There is, because when I used to work in Cedar Mill, I would leave Hillsborough and there'd be no wind, and there'd be no ice or anything. And then by the time I got to Cedar Mill, there'd be maybe a quarter, half inch of ice on things, and the east wind would be blowing. And there was enough getting over the West Hills and down into that area. But that's where it kind of peters out. Once you get to like 185th, it's gone. There's nothing. Or even 158th, where your studios are.
Yep.
It's a side note, but it would be interesting, and I know we probably got some weather service folks on here. It would be so interesting to put a weather gauge out. We've got a lot of open areas here in Bethany that are, preserve areas. We could get some kind of a weather instrument into that area. It would be really cool to see what the wind effect is through here with that east wind that comes through the gap. And because it just rocks here. Typically with a flow like that, with a low coming in from the coast, we'll get winds pretty similar to what Troutdale is getting.
I've noticed that. And then as we get deeper, as we get farther into the event, then the wind quiets down here, and then it's screaming sometimes even harder out there, where the wind gets compressed closer to the gorge.
Yeah.
Mark, you asked about consecutive snow. Mike in the chat is saying that we had a 12 consecutive snow year from, I believe, 46 to 57, 58. And then we had 8 consecutive years from 83 to 91. And if you pull up your 20-year chart that you show, that's showing 15 to the last 20 years with measurable snowfall. So are you wanting to expand out 15 to 20 years, or are you just more concerned about the consecutive last 6? Because you pull up that chart again, 15 years out of 20, it makes it sound like it gets snow more than not.
Wait, what is it? Was that, I assume that was Mike Newman, right? So
yeah, no, it's Mike. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Krejci.
Oh yeah. So what's he saying? I just chose. Is it just 20 years? That's just how it fit on the.
Yeah. So your graph is 20 years. The last 20 years.
Yeah, I just did the last 20.
And Mark, did I see you show on one of your spreadsheets that the lowest 850 millibar temperature over Portland during this winter was 0.07?
No, that was Let me back up. Do I still have control? Let's see. First, the snow. This just happens to be the last 20. I didn't want to fit more on here. So that's the 20. And then, no, this was, here, right? Steve, You're talking about this.
One there.
No, that was during the event. That was during the event.
Minus 0.7, that's it?
Yeah, that was Wednesday through Sunday. Because remember, over Salem, it was, the cold air was extremely shallow once you got out of the gorge.
Okay, I thought it was over Portland. Sorry. It'd be much deeper and colder over Portland.
Yeah. Well, we don't know if 850, it may not have been.
True.
I seem to remember it being around -1 or -2 in that range at the coldest.
I get what you're saying now, because you're saying it was so shallow that it would have been warmer at 5,400 feet at 850 than it would have been at 925 or something like that. That's why that number looks, yeah, I get it. Oh, there you go. Yeah, there's the 925.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier about this being the longest stretch 3 days in a row with the high temperature in February at or below 32. I went back and I looked. There's a station looking at the NCEI data. I've got a tool that I can search with it. It's called the Portland Regional Forecast Office, and they have records from 1871 through 1973. I think it's on the east bank of the river. They had 1936, February 1936, On the 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, and 18th, they had high temperatures at or below 30 degrees for those 6 days in a row.
Ooh, I only had that. That was the airport records. That's probably why I didn't have that.
Right. There's a, yeah,
Well,
there's a,
plus I
this one,
guessed.
this one
I
goes
thought I
back a
heard-
little further.
Yeah,
Pete pulling out the numbers.
pulling out the old stuff.
Yeah.
So not unprecedented.
Dan Wolf in the
It
chat
was
says,
airport,
it's
but that was-
interesting how cold air moving south through the valley has a really hard time moving south of Salem. Seems to sweep into Albany somewhat, but not a large punch unless it's a wilder winter event or winter wind.
Well, it's because we remember those lows were coming up against the coastline. If they were coming in at Coos Bay and North Bend, that would have pulled the cold air much farther south. Right?
Yeah, if that cold air had gone another 25 miles south, I think the ice storm would have been a lot reduced in the Portland metro area, and Hillsborough would have gotten probably a foot of snow.
I mean,
it never seems to work that way.
I mean, every event is just a different version of the same sort of thing. Like, okay, well, how far south does the Arctic air come? So the farther south it goes, the deeper it is, the better chance you'd have snow instead of freezing rain. And the areas that had rain, like Eugene, if it was farther south, then they'd get freezing rain. So the warmest events are where only the east side, there's the lows coming in maybe just straight at us or coming towards Astoria and stays to the north, and then you only get freezing rain east metro. And it doesn't even make it down into the valley. So every event is just a different version of that, really.
Mark, do you agree with the sentiment? No gorge, no Portland winter?
Boy, it would be a lot different. We'd be like Seattle. We'd have to have it coming down from the north. Or, you know, this time it did come a little bit over the Cascades as well. Some. There was somebody, I think it's Andrew, that lives near Silver Falls at 1,600 feet. He had freezing rain, not a whole lot. But he had freezing rain as that event first started because the cold air was coming directly over the Cascades on the easterly flow. And he said that's really unusual there. He hardly ever gets it. So that's why some places that on the east side that typically wouldn't see much freezing rain, like in the hills above Scotts Mills or Molalla, had a little bit of freezing rain at the beginning before the warmer air overhead worked in.
Portland radio legend John Erickson's in the chat and wants you to talk about the east winds a little bit. Obviously the catalyst for this whole event, but can you talk about that and how the gorge effect really kind of kicked this whole thing off?
Wait, what are you looking for, John? What was the?
He just said, can you talk about the east wind? So I'm now prefacing saying, you know, we obviously that's the catalyst for this whole event. So can you just kind of talk about that setup and why the east wind is responsible for setting up our winter type weather in these situations?
Sure, because it's the only sea level gap in the Cascades between British Columbia and, well, I guess there is no other sea level gap until somewhere beyond the Sierra. But the point is basically cold air that moves down east of the Cascades is trapped there, except that we have this gap through the Cascades, maybe about 2 miles wide once you're up a few thousand feet. And so that allows air to move either direction, west or east through the Cascades, you know, through the gap. And if we didn't, and that's why, for example, if you live in Camas or Washougal or Trouttville or Gresham, you're right where that cold east wind comes out of the gorge. That's where it's strongest right there. It flips right now, this time of the year, it flips to a westerly wind. And that's why it's windy all through the warm season at Hood River and the Dalles at the other end, because then the mild marine air is pushing out and replacing the warmer air east side. So yeah, if, like somebody said, if we didn't have the Columbia River Gorge, we sure wouldn't have as many ice storms in the metro area. And like this specific event, that's interesting. In this specific event, if we didn't have the gorge, we probably would have only had some spots of freezing rain, I suppose. It would have filtered in from the north and tried to come over the Cascades, but not be very effective.
I have a question. Mark, are you jealous that I've now had 3 foot plus snow events in the past 4 years?
That's
Clark
amazing.
County? Actually, 22. I think that's pretty amazing.
And you're up in the Hazeldale area or Salmon Creek?
Salmon Creek. Yeah.
It's God's
The-
country, huh? If you want snow. As they say.
January 2017 was about 13, 14 inches, and this one was pretty much the same. So all within 4 years of each other.
One thing the models didn't do that well on in general is that the big snow event in February is that there were hints through each of those models, the WRF, the Euro, there were hints. Did you guys see it? that there'd be a hole of like not much snow somewhere around Battleground or Inner East
I saw
Gresham.
that.
It kept making some sort of hole, and that didn't happen at all. We've seen that
Donut hole.
before, but it's interesting how I was a little bit unsure about that. So I would just use more, for good reason, like generic wording, like, okay, up north metro, it's going to be whatever we were saying, 5 to 12 inches. Or whatever.
Here's something important, I think, that people that are watching that kind of dig into it like we do. So the University of Washington WRF model, when we're
Mhm.
looking at all the snow, there's model snowfall and snowfall. So Mark, because you and I talk about this all the time, tell everybody else why one shows one thing and one shows the other, and which one we should be looking at.
Do not look when we're at these marginal event, not the marginal events where we get cooler coming just onshore flow showers, but when we're going to have freezing rain mixed in, you read it. It even shows that in the description. If you go to the UW WRF model, actually, I can share screen, right? Is that okay? Can I do that?
If not here to say no.
Yeah, absolutely can.
How do I share my? Stand by.
Yeah, share whatever's on your screen. Just make sure you're not filling out your time card.
Actually, what do I have on my screen? Okay, here we go. We should be good. Can I just minimize this? Can you see?
We see your PowerPoint.
Yeah, and I'm trying to get out. Can you see my desktop now?
No.
Stand by. We're going to share again. Here we go. Just brought the meeting to a halt. Maybe I cannot actually share my desktop. That's interesting. Anyway, so let me just, I can tell you, it's just when you look at, there's two different kinds of snowfall in the wharf, which by the way, I don't know if you guys feel this way, but the wharf did great in the end. It did great on both these events, the tiny one in late January. And then again, this big event in the end, it was very similar, showing a foot or so north metro, but it'll have a snowfall, then there'll be a model snowfall. And in the description, it specifically says model snowfalls when whatever the model is generating for snowfall. Under snowfall, it says it's going to snow anytime the surface temperature is 32 degrees or colder, which means in the freezing rain situations, it's going to show snow. Like in this case, it showed heavy snow all the way down to Salem, like the day before the ice storm. Ignore that stuff. You got to go for model snowfall, model snowfall, model snowfall. Got it? Model snowfall.
Cliff is in the chat. Maybe he can type in the chat what the answer is.
The Cliff? Professor
Cliff.
Cliff.
He says, I can tell the difference if you would like.
That'd be great.
So Cliff, you'll just have to type it in.
Mark, while we're waiting for Cliff, we do have one comment here. Without the gorge, would Portland see more foggy days?
Yeah, the east side for sure. The east wind helps us a lot in the winter, keeping the fog away. Actually, a lot of times, think how many times in the winter Salem and Eugene and Albany and sometimes Kelso and Longview are foggy, and we're sitting in the sunshine with a bit of an easterly breeze. So that helps a lot. We'd be stuck in the muck more often.
Yeah, it even
I-
helps in Hillsborough.
I've got another piece of trivia for you.
Oh, this is good.
Okay, Salem only managed 30 degrees on February 12th, and I'm looking back at their records courtesy of NCEI. Only twice, going all the way back to 1893, did they have days that were in February later than that didn't make it above 30. Only twice, 1995 on February 13th and 1936 again on February 17th. They were just 24. That was the coldest outbreak for so late in the year. It was 1936.
So that shows what an amazing event it was.
Yes, it was.
We'll be old men before it happens again, maybe.
Yeah, hey,
Or
Cliff.
next year.
Cliff, if you see this, I just sent you the link to the Zoom. So if you want to jump in the Zoom, Bobby will let you in real quick. But Bobby also got your response there in the chat too. Maybe we'll get a cameo by Cliff here in the next 1 minute.
Wonderful. Do we have any other questions, comments, complaints?
We do not have any more questions or comments at the moment, but like I said, we are waiting on Cliff if he wants to pop in. He did say model snowfall is exactly what the model is showing. The other is based on a statistic model of snow versus no snow plus precipitation.
Say that again.
So model snowfall is exactly what the model is showing.
Sure.
The other is based on a statistical model of snow versus no snow plus precipitation.
Okay. I do know when I look at that, when we have these freezing rain situations, it usually the freezing rain will be shown in the freezing rain area where we know it's going to be freezing rain, and that clearly the sounding shows it too warm above. It'll show it as snow. Oh, here he comes, Cliff.
He's connecting.
Precipitation.
Okay.
Hopefully we can see him.
When I look at that, when we have these freezing rain situations,
Can you hear me?
usually we can, Cliff. Thank
I
you
hear
for joining us. An area where we know it's going to be freezing rain, and that clearly
But Cliff, you need to turn the volume down on your Facebook feed.
Cliff.
Okay, I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can see it too.
You can see me
Welcome.
too?
You just popped in like magic.
Yeah, I know, it's the magic.
It's the wrong shirt though. You need to have a Coug shirt on.
Can you hear me?
You can, Cliff.
I
Thank
hear
you
you.
for joining us. Yeah, turn off your Facebook feed. It's delayed.
Turn the volume
Oh.
down on your Facebook feed.
Okay, I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can see it too.
Okay. Okay, I'm off the Facebook now. Okay, is it working?
Can you hear us now? Are we live?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Okay.
Much better. Okay. So yeah, explain that if you could, the model snowfall and the snow.
Okay, so the model snowfall is what you'd expect. You know, there's the microphysics of the model. There's snow in the model, and basically we're adding up what's hitting the ground. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. The other way was the first way we did it. Rick Steed came up with this. There's a statistical relationship between not only the surface, but other parameters in the atmosphere, okay, whether it's snow or not snow. So we take the precipitation falling in the model, and we decide whether it's snow or no snow based on this statistical relationship that takes input of the model temperatures and things like that at various levels. So that's the other way, okay? So, I mean, they generally don't differ. They generally are not that different, but I normally look at the model snowfall myself. Okay.
Yeah, I've noticed when we have the freezing rain, it will often show that as snow.
Yeah. So
And
Yeah.
the sounding clearly would be freezing rain.
that's right. Yeah. I mean, anything that's very shallow is very difficult for the model. It really is. So anyway, that's the difference between the two. The other thing, when you're doing a snow forecast, we have this wonderful graphic online that has rain and snow on the same graphic.
It's nice.
That's a really nice one to look at in these situations.
Yeah, that's really good stuff. I noticed you just brightened up the colors on the precipitation display as well. They look good.
Yeah. Well, we're going to the spring numbers now, but
Oh, that's why.
yeah. So,
You
but
have
the other
any
thing to
thoughts
keep,
on- oh,
I mean, the other thing to keep in mind, look at the ensemble. I mean, we have the highest resolution ensemble in the country, the 4-kilometer ensemble. So I would take a look at that one.
Good stuff. Cliff is gone.
Oh, I'm back. I had to close the door.
I close the door. You're interrupting somebody's Netflix.
Yeah.
Cliff, do you have any thoughts? You know, Washington was a bit different. You had more action up there for sure. We were kind of on the southern edge of these systems that whole first half of the winter, it seemed like, down here.
That's right. Although, obviously the February was the big event for us as well. It really was. But our snowpack, was much better. Earlier in the season, our snow. So, we have a pretty healthy snowpack. So it's working out pretty well as a La Nina year, obviously. Yeah. So, I mean, one thing about that storm was very interesting. The fact we had this marginal cold air in, and then we had the system coming in. I mean, this was not the best situation. The air was not that cold. So, and to get snow like that is pretty unusual.
We had the heavy precip. Half those events, 3/4 of those events, we just don't have the heavy precip at the same time. So we're talking 1, 2, 3 inches, and that's it. But to have that much precip come in was just amazing.
But there was a major model failure, and that was in our WRF and a lot of the modeling systems was the east-west precipitation, the east-west snowfall. It was too dry in the eastern side of Puget Sound and too wet on the western side. That was a major physics error, which we're working on right now. But the larger scale models were actually getting it more uniform and turned out to be right. So that was a significant problem for us. The easterly flow ate away at the snow way too much.
I do notice ahead of time, now we're talking like 3, 4, 5, 6 days out, that the WRF will be extremely cold at the surface, like coming through the gorge, where, you know, it was showing highs in 10 degrees at the Dalles and Hood River, and we knew that wouldn't happen. But is that based off what was at that time a very cold GFS?
Yeah, and remember, we're being driven by the GFS, right?
Yeah.
So that's why you look at the ensembles. The ensembles were very valuable because we're also driven by the UK Met Office model and the Canadian model, things like that. So I really push people to look at the 4-kilometer ensembles now.
And we were just told by the IBM, the weather company, that's the provider for most of the weather graphics. Probably 80% of the TV weather graphics now are using what used to be called WSI,
Right.
and now IBM owns them. And now they have this IBM graph model, which goes out the same length, it's 72
Yeah.
hours. But apparently they use now, you probably know more about this than me, but they now are using the Euro, the 6-hour initialization from 6 hours back. Like their 12Z will use the 6Z Euro, and so they now initialize off the Euro.
Right, but they're using the impasse model.
Yeah.
Is the model they are? That's their high. They got rid of WRF and they basically switched to impasse. So, but they found they're using the European Center for Initialization Times. Yeah.
We'll see how that does. It was, I wasn't, it did okay, I think. In the mid, when we got in, the problem was when we got in the middle, when we were, Portland Metro was right on the line, you know, freezing rain, ice pellets, snow, and everything was wavering around. So it was kind of hard to compare at times.
But you made a very important point, Mark, and that is, you know, ensembles are important. And in these kind of situations, and we're often on the edge with the snow situations, the uncertainty is very important, and the ensembles are very valuable just in those cases.
Yeah.
Good point.
All right, Steve, I got to go eat lunch and I got to be on at 9 again.
Okay.
Well, thanks for joining us, Cliff.
Okay, sure. My pleasure. Take care.
All right.
Hey, thanks for being in there, Cliff. Oh, good to see you.
Good to see you. And did you mention about our joint meeting?
No, let's let you do that right now.
Okay, this is an historic situation. Every year we have a Northwest Weather Workshop, except last year because of COVID. Well, we're going to do it this year, but it's going to be online. And so the Portland chapter, the Oregon chapter, is going to join the Puget Sound chapter in helping to sponsor the Northwest Weather Workshop. So this is going to be a joint workshop. So it's going to be on May 1st, Saturday, May 1st. There's a link that I don't know if you could distribute that to everybody. Why don't you distribute it? But if somebody wants to give a talk at the Northwest Weather Workshop, get it to me by April 10th. I'm going to have an agenda, and people from anywhere can join the meeting. So it should be fun doing it together.
Sure. Excellent. We're glad to be with you on that.
Yeah. Thanks.
Tyree, Pete, any questions?
Here, Steve.
I had, and it's a side note, and I don't mean to put him on the spot. It's a question for Dr. Mass is, I've just noticed because I was doing some climate work and I noticed the blob is gone up there in the Gulf of Alaska. Any comments on that?
Well, it has weakened out, and you know, you have to expect that it's been stormy enough that that's been the end of the blob. The blob is there because high pressure is relatively persistent over the ocean, and we had a large periods of time when we had major systems coming through, low pressure offshore, and that was the death for the blob. So, yeah, that's why. I mean, it's still there slightly, but not much. That's why.
Gotcha. So that, and then I've noticed there's been a shift here in the last year. We had basically 6 years of positive Pacific decadal oscillation, but the last year it's gone negative. Any thoughts on that? Is that something that you think is a shift of a trend, or is that just a blip?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that. I mean, it's been going back and forth. It hasn't been consistent recently. It's not like it was back in the 50s and 60s, that kind of thing. You know, it has not been consistent. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, Bobby, anything else? Mark, anything else? Good
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, we got a lot of people watching. By the way, this link will be available on the Oregon AMS Facebook page to review, rewatch at any time. You can share it on your Facebook page, share it with other folks. Again, if you want to be an Oregon AMS member, just Google Oregon AMS. It goes right to our Facebook page. I always say that. It goes right to our webpage, That's where you can sign up and pay your dues online. $10 a year, so that's pretty snazzy. Coming up in April, we're working on putting together a very specific meeting with the National Weather Service, perhaps Colby Newman or Sean Weigel. And then on the PG side, Charlie will join us, and we're going to talk about that specific storm in February, the big snow and ice storm and the impacts to the power grid, and then very detailed look from the National Weather Service's point of view on how this thing come together, very similar to what Mark did, but in much, much more detail. So keep an eye out for that. We'll get it out on Facebook for everybody as well. Bobby, any last thoughts or comments?
Nope, I know Mark will eventually go through it. There are some questions about forward looking into summer. And I know that we had a couple questions about ice storm damage. Could that lead to more fire when more trees down? We will get into that a little bit prior to the next meeting, but we will do probably a summer forecast at some point coming up. So yeah, bear with us. We're still trying to dig out and recap from what we just went through with winter.
Yep. And Mark, work with Brian and we'll get your actual presentation uploaded onto our website so folks can actually pull your presentation if they want to look at it at home as well.
Yeah,
They could watch.
we will get a PDF posted.
That's right. Oh, yes. Something that can't be altered, right?
Well, I suppose, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Pete, thanks for joining us as well. We thought we'd throw Pete in here and we knew
Thanks
he
for
had some
having
good
me.
things to say. And by the
Great
way,
presentation, Mark. That was very, very detailed. Fantastic graphics as always.
Labor of love, a labor of love.
It is a labor of love. That's a lot of work,
Yes.
but you have to do that in real time. There's no way you could go back and remember all those specifics. And so to do that on the fly as you go, we really appreciate that. It's a great way to preserve the information now for not only for now, but for, generations to come. We've got that information because, I do a lot of looking back at climate records, and it's tough to get specific climate records with that kind of detail that far back. And so that's valuable stuff that you put together.
Thank you. Yeah, I
Yes.
enjoy doing it. I have 18 of them now. I think that's the number because the first one I have in there is 2003. For some reason, there's a palm tree in it. Maybe, I guess that was a mild winter. And it's like 6 slides. So things have,
Wow.
I've expanded the content over the years. File gets bigger and bigger every time.
It's nice. No, is that accessible somewhere? All of those. So again, I'm not joking. If 20 years from now somebody wants to go back and get a summary of a winter, those really need to house those somewhere where they can be accessible for meteorologists for decades to come, so that they can get a recap of what a particular winter looked like.
So Pete is very nicely and professionally saying, if I were to, kind of check out, are those lost?
No, well, we're all going to check out eventually, is what I'm saying. I'm looking at summaries back from the 1930s and 20s and stuff, and it's there.
Yeah,
there
that's
might
a
be some.
good idea. Yeah, I should just have those posted. We could put those on the AMS website. Just PDFs.
Sure.
We like PDFs.
Check out. That's funny. No, Mark's not going anywhere anytime soon, right?
No, that's
I don't know.
not.
Not anywhere.
Yeah, I don't know who's going to fill in and do this meeting if you're not around anymore.
Somebody will have to take up the mantle. But I got to run. It's 8:17. I got to go.
8:17. Okay,
But it's
everybody.
been fun,
Sounds
everybody.
Thank you,
Sounds
Mark.
like we're good. Thanks for joining. And Bobby's going to take us out of here. And just a couple of quick notes. If you guys here on Zoom could stay here for a minute, and we'll just say goodbye to everybody on Facebook. All right. We'll see you details on that April meeting coming up. See ya.